All right, now that we've got this line, we've got the 10,000 marker, and we got the now marker, I think I would like to add in full-on axes, like all-out axes, using D3 axis. Now, this is going to require a rather interesting integration with React and D3, using refs, references, React refs, and React hooks to actually use D3 to do the DOM manipulation within certain group elements. So here's the strategy for this. We introduce React components that just create SVG group elements. And inside of those components, we can get access to the underlying DOM element after React has rendered it inside useEffect using refs. And then we can invoke D3 axis to just do the DOM manipulation for our axis. So let's do it. Let's get to it. I'm going to start by forking this. And then just to set my intention, I'm going to change the title with D3 axes. Or this is going to be more of a technical focus, so I'm going to say React plus D3 axes. So the question arises, who owns the axes? Is it index.js? Is it our app component? Is it our line chart component? I think it's our line chart component. But just like X marker line and Y marker line, X-axis and Y-axis could be a pretty good split for different components rather than putting everything in the line chart component. So let me sketch out what that might look like. Before our path, or after, it doesn't really matter, we could put X-axis. And it's going to need to know about certain things. Definitely, it's going to need to know about the X scale. So I'll just go ahead and put that in first. And I think that's all it needs to know about for the time being, just to get started. And I know I'm going to want it in a separate file, so I'm just going to start with it in a separate file. I'm going to call it xaxis.js. And we can pull in x-axis from ./x-axis. And we're getting an error. X-axis is not exported by xaxis.js. So let's fix that. Let's say export const x-axis is going to be a function, particularly a React component, that takes as input a prop of x scale for sure. I know we're going to need that. And it's going to return a humble SVG group element. Now, this SVG group element is special because we're going to make it a ref. This means that we can get access to the actual DOM element, not this virtual DOM, the actual DOM element that we can pass into D3 to let D3 do the DOM manipulation to add the axis. The way that we do that is use refs. In the React hooks API reference, there's a link to useRef. This is the hook that we need to use here. We just call useRef, and then when we're rendering our elements, we just say ref equals that ref. Ref is a special prop that all of these React elements can accept. And if you set it up like this, after it renders, it's going to assign this ref.current to be the actual DOM node that you can pass into D3. Well, let's just take a quick look through this example in their documentation. useRef returns a mutable ref object whose .current property is initialized to the passed argument. We don't need to use the passed argument. And here's a common use case. For example, a text input with a focus button. If you click on this button, it'll invoke this function which calls input_l.current.focus. And .focus is a method on DOM elements. It's a DOM API, from the document object model API that's built into the browsers without any library. .focus is there. And so input L.current is the actual DOM node for this input element after it's been rendered by React. And input L is useRef. And they're passing in null just to give it a default value of null, which doesn't really matter. So that's an overview of useRef. Let's use this sample code to get started using this in our code. Now, remember why we need to use useRef. This group element is something that we need to get access to its raw DOM element to pass into D3 axes. So this is where we need to set ref equal to, I'm just going to call it ref, because there's only going to be one of them. And ref is, I'm going to paste that sample code. Ref is useRef. I'm not going to pass anything. And now, oh, wait a minute. I think there's an error. Yeah, useRef is not defined because I didn't import it. Import useRef from React. OK, now it's working. Now that we have this ref, we can use the useEffect hook to get access to it, like this. UseEffect. And this is another thing we're going to have to import from React. So I'll do it now. Now, useEffect takes as input 2 arguments. The first argument being a function, and the second argument being an array of dependencies. And always remember, if you don't specify that array of dependencies, it's going to run every time the component renders, which we don't want, I don't think. Let me think about that. I don't think we want that. In this case, it's just a static visualization, so it doesn't really matter. We can just do it once, and we'll be good. So this is how we do it. Inside of useEffect, we can access ref.current. This will give us the actual SVG group DOM element. And that is what we can pass into select from D3, D3 select. And this is what I would traditionally name x-axis G, because it's the x-axis group element. And for this to work, we need to import select from D3. It runs just to verify that it's doing what I think it's doing. I'm going to say console.log x-axis G. And it gives us something that looks like a minified variable name, but has groups and parents. Yeah, this looks like a D3 selection. All right, that's how you can do it. That's how you can use D3 selection with React refs. Now, what we need to do is render the axes in here. So let's look at some example of D3 axes. The D3 axes package is what we need here. And here's how you use it. D3.axis left, or axis top, or axis bottom, or axis right, I think. But who puts axes on the right? What we want here is axis bottom. So in our code here, we can import axis bottom from D3, and then we can define x-axis to be axis bottom. And I believe, if I recall correctly, you can pass in the scale, just like that. But let me check the documentation just to, yeah, that's totally how it is. See, D3.axis left, scale. And then to render it, see, this is how you would render it with D3, .call axis. And so what we've got in our code here is essentially the same thing as what would result from all this code, but we got it through React. React is managing the parent group element. So we could just say x-axis G.call axis. So let's try that. X-axis G.call x-axis. And lo and behold, it worked. Oh my gosh, look at that. It's on the top, which is not where I want it to be. But that's not too hard to solve. How we usually do it with D3, and we can just carry that over to React, is we say, on this group element, the transform is translate. We want to translate this down. So 0 in the x direction, and in the y direction, that should be inner height. I'm pretty sure. Yep, That should be inner height. Yeah, so the thing is we don't have inner height here. So let me accept inner height as a prop. And then over in our line chart.js, we pass in inner height to the x-axis like this. Inner height equals inner height. Okay, that worked. That worked. Our axis is now on the bottom. We're left with some styling issues. So let's see how these are typically resolved. I think these are typically resolved just through CSS. I could try to find some example, but I think I can just, poke around in here and figure out how to turn things on and off. So if I just inspect this element, we can see this DOM structure that D3 has generated inside of our axis. One thing that I just don't want to see is the domain path. Yeah, the domain path, if you just delete that element, it gets rid of that line. So we can style this with CSS. If we just, in our CSS, we can say .domain to select that domain path. We could say display as none. And now we need to think about, what do we really want our axis to look like? One thing I think would be really cool is to have these lines going all the way across and then make them like a muted color. So let me try that. I believe there's something we can tweak about axis bottom to make them go all the way across. I think it might be tick size. Let me try tick size. Yeah, I think that's it. See, tick size is 20. It makes these go down like that. And so if I say minus 20, the ticks go up into that inner rectangle of the visualization. And so now we've got inner height and scope here, so we can say inner height. Yeah, so these are the tick lines, which I kind of want to style them in a more muted way. They're really intense right now. Let's take a look at these elements again to see how we can access them from CSS. See, all these group elements have a class of tick, and that tick includes the line and the text elements, but we can use this to our advantage and say .tick space line is the selector we need here. So .tick space line. The lines of the ticks, their stroke should be, let's say, red, just to see if it works. Okay, they're red. Great. Now, let me see if I can use the Chrome DevTools to pull up the color picker for these. And indeed it works. See that? Yeah, this is a cool trick that you can try sometime. Just open up the Chrome DevTools, go to the styles, and you can change the color in real time. But it doesn't persist to the code, so once you find a color you like, I kind of like this color right here. I'll just copy this hex string out of here and then go back into the code and use that as our color. Very good. That looks pretty decent. I kind of want to make these a little farther away from the bottom. Let's see how we can do that. I think there's a way to do it in D3 axes, but I don't remember what it is. Ah, tick padding. I think it's tick padding. Let's give it a try. So if we append here, tick padding is, let's say, 20. Okay, that adds some nice space below our ticks. See, that's that white space there. I kind of want to make it match up with that now text. And I kind of want to make these labels a little smaller. And then I think we'll be pretty much done with this segment. So Alt-P to use prettier to format. And let's set the tick padding to 18. That looks pretty good. And now let's make these labels a little smaller. And we can do that by saying tick text. Same selector, but instead of the line, the text. For this, the fill, I think, is what we need to change. Make it red to just test if it's working. Okay, it is working. Yeah, that can be a little muted as well, but not quite as muted as that one. Let me go back in here and get that color picker back and pick a darker tone. Yeah, that's a good one. And now let's make the font size a little smaller. I like EM because 1EM is what it is now. It's like the default. Or wait a minute, something's wrong here. Oh, I remember. With axes, there's something strange about the EM unit. So probably best if we just avoid it. What if we say 16 pixels? Yeah, how about like 14 pixels? That looks pretty good. All right, there we have it. That's how you can add a D3 axis, a real D3 axis, where D3 is doing the DOM manipulation, into a React component using the useRef hook and the useEffect hook. And you can use some CSS to style it as you would if it were rendered in D3. All right, thanks for watching.